There are many different training splits for lifting weights. You can train using a traditional bodybuilding split where Monday is an international chest day, and you only train each muscle group once per week. You can follow an upper and lower body split, or you could even train using full body workouts. But which is the best workout routine for building muscle? Let's dive in. Muscle training frequency. Each of these training splits has a different training frequency. Training frequency refers to the number of times that you train a muscle each week. For example, if you follow a traditional bodybuilding split and you only train your chest on Mondays, then that means your training frequency for the chest, or pectorals, is once per week. On the other hand, if you perform 3 full body sessions per week, hitting every muscle on every workout, then each muscle would have a training frequency of 3 times per week. What is the best workout routine for building muscle? To answer the question of which is the best routine for muscle gain, we need to look at some research. Thankfully, we have dozens of resistance training studies to look at that use different training protocols with different frequencies. For example, a 2016 meta-analysis by Brad Schoenfeld included data from over 10 resistance training studies that directly compare the effects of higher versus lower training frequencies on muscle growth. The results indicated that training each muscle at least twice per week resulted in significantly greater muscle growth than training them just once per week. Additionally, training muscles more than twice per week did not result in any additional benefits. It's funny, because traditional bodybuilding splits that train each muscle just once per week are some of the most popular types of training splits amongst people looking to build muscle. However, according to this meta-analysis, that type of workout routine probably isn't optimal for muscle growth. In fact, most people would likely make better progress in the gym if they simply trained each muscle at least twice per week. In other words, according to this scientific analysis, a workout routine that trains each muscle twice per week is the best weekly workout routine for building muscle. Training frequency versus training volume. Now the question that we need to ask is whether the benefits of training a muscle twice per week are inherently due to the effects of training frequency, or is it because of other variables like volume? Thankfully, we also have research that gives us insight into this question. For example, a 2019 systematic review showed that training a muscle 3 or more times per week isn't superior to training it only once per week when the total volume is the same. In other words, when training volume is equated, training frequency does not seem to substantially affect muscle growth. However, when the researchers looked at the effects of training frequency without training volume being equated, they did find a modest benefit for higher training frequencies. Overall, what these studies really tell us is that training frequency itself doesn't inherently affect muscle growth. But what they do tell us is that higher training frequencies allow us to train with more volume, which results in better muscle growth. There's ample research showing a positive relationship between training volume and muscle growth. So it makes sense that training a muscle twice per week would be better for muscle growth than training a muscle once per week if you perform more overall volume. For example, let's say that you train your chest only once per week on Mondays, and you're completely gassed after 10 hard sets for your chest. So your weekly training volume for chest is 10 sets. Now let's say you start training your chest on Mondays and Thursdays, and you perform 6 or 7 sets on each of those workouts. Now your training volume has jumped from 10 sets per week to 12 to 14 sets per week. Since you're doing more overall hard sets when you train your chest twice per week, you're going to experience better muscle growth. If you're someone who really likes traditional bodybuilding splits, you might be thinking, okay, great, but what if I just do 12 to 14 hard sets in one day? Would that be the same as performing it in 2 days? And the answer is no, not really. Keep in mind that your performance is also incredibly important for muscle hypertrophy. If you've been training for several years and you really push yourself when you're in the gym, then your muscles are probably pretty gassed after 7 or 8 intense sets. Think about it. If you perform 2 to 3 sets of the bench press, followed by 2 to 3 sets of dumbbell chest presses, and then finish that off with 2 sets of cable chest flies to failure, your chest is going to be pretty pumped and fatigued. Could you still do more? Maybe, but your performance is going to suffer because you're already fatigued from the work that you've done. There's no way that your 15th set of chest for the day is going to be as high quality as your first set. You won't be able to use as much weight, and you won't be able to perform as many reps compared to doing that exercise when you're fresh. So instead of doing 15 sets of chest in one day, you'd be better off doing 15 sets for the week and splitting them up into 2 workouts so that you're fresher and perform better on each individual set. How often should you lift weights? In general, training each muscle group at least 2 times per week is going to be extremely beneficial for building muscle compared to training each muscle group only once per week. If you currently train each muscle group just once per week, then simply split your workouts in half so that you can train each muscle twice per week.